Hey guys, and welcome back to this hopefully really awesome episode of Digital Artcast. As always, when we talk to you, I hope you're staying safe and creative wherever you are. Today, we have an artist on who I've known for many years, and we've always had great conversations about art, about music, about life in general. And it's someone that I've wanted to have on for a very long time. But of course, he is, like everybody I interview, very busy with his work, with his life, and trying to find a small snippet in the middle where we can have a conversation is always challenging, but we've managed to push together an hour at this point in time and have a little back and forth. Today, we are talking to an artist, an art director, a creator, musician, just general awesome person, Mr. Rembert Montald. So, hello Rembert, how are you doing?
Thank you. That was just how I wrote it. So that...
Yeah, I've got it down here at the side of me. I hope I've done well.
No, fantastic. Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been listening to your podcast a lot while I'm working. So
yeah, we talked about that before we started recording, about how we've been friends. I consider us friends for many years now, and we definitely have this thing of this back and forth. We've talked about a lot of different stuff, even outside of art, and yeah, it's been these things where, I think it's always been interesting to watch the both of us claw our way through the industry and try and make it to some point of like meaningfulness. And you're now solidified in the art god's masterpiece, Monfos of that, because you now have an art book, which we're going to talk about at one point, which is this one, which is Figured Out. And also, you have a career at the back of you. For people who don't know Rembert's work, he has worked in many different spheres of artistic prowess, but mostly is known for his time at Riot Games, where he's been working for many years now. So, for people who don't know you, Rembert, what is your current job title?
My current job title is first of all, I don't really like titles. So
right.
for me to, it is on paper like senior concept artist / storyboard artist, which is a very odd title to have those combined. There's not that many jobs
because you probably do so much stuff outside of that as well.
Yeah, you mean my personal work?
No, I mean like in general in your work. I mean, like, just to kind of phase back to the book, Ryan, who done your foreword, talked about the fact that like he's thrown so much work at you. Like, you've done so much stuff, right? You do concepts, right. You do storyboards.
Yeah, it's actually so. I will forever treasure my first. Where do you want to actually jump in the story when I was already my first job at Riot, or how I got it? Because I think I already covered that in other videos. So maybe.
Yeah, so we know how you've kind of came through THU and Ryan saw your stuff. You got freelanced. I think you were in Croatia at the time. You were doing freelance work for Riot Games, and then you moved to LA in 2017, something like that. 2018.
Yes.
18, right? Okay. So yeah, you've been there now 5 or 6 years, and you've done a bunch of stuff, right? So you started, I think, initially as storyboard stuff for in-betweens, a lot more animation-based stuff, right?
It's actually, no, actually what happened is I started already working with Riot when I was in Croatia. So
right.
And I remember, I don't know if I covered this, so I'll just briefly go over it again. Yep. So I met Ryan at THU, and he said, "Would you be interested in working with me in LA?" But I saw other art directors, artists, whatever, big names going around with people's portfolio and looking at it and saying, "Wow, this is pretty good. Like, you can work for us," and then hearing nothing after the festival from them. So what I just assumed is, they're just being nice in the moment, like, saying, you can work for us. And then never hear from them again, so to say, which I wouldn't blame them, because I mean, there's so many amazing work, so it's hard to get everyone in. So I was just thinking, he's just saying that to be nice. Like, I was really, but every time I bumped into him at the festival, he did mention to me, "Don't forget to send me your portfolio when you get home." So I was like, "Oh, that's a different tone." So I was like, you know what, I'll do. I was going to do it anyway, but like, okay, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. So I come home from THU that Monday, back in where I was living at the time in Croatia, and I started writing this mail. Like he wrote his mail in the back of my sketchbook.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Dear Mr. Woodward, I hope you remember me. I hope you got safe
Back
trip.
to LA and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here's my portfolio. So thank you anyway for all the advice from the weekend, something like that. And I just send it, and I thought he's never gonna answer this.
Yeah.
It's gonna add some spam box.
Yeah.
1 minute later, he
Yeah.
answered me. It's like even 1 or 2 minutes, and I was like, holy,
Yeah. Crazy.
like, yeah, I was like, gonna curse. I'll try to
Yeah.
make
Oh no,
this like
fuck it. Yeah, see what you want.
I'll bleep myself.
Merde.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he did say, "Hey, yeah, I write save. I'll pass it around the team." And I was just like, wow. But even then, I didn't hear it as much. But back then, now I know why that is, because it's really hard to hire someone in a big company like that, especially if you're overseas.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
didn't hear from him for like a month and a half, 2 months, like I think
Right.
something like that. And I was starting to like go back to that mindset of like, well, like I can't blame him. He's trying. It's already a wonder he answered. So I was
Yeah.
already grateful for that. And I went out one evening and I came back at 2 in the morning. Wasn't a very eventful evening, so I just went into bed and like I do with my bad habits, I
Mhm.
watch my phone before I go to sleep,
Right.
which I
Yeah. Yeah.
shouldn't. And suddenly I see like a mail introduction to Riot Games. Hello, my name is like I didn't even open it. I was like, holy fuck, and I dropped my phone and I fell out of bed, literally. I didn't want to open the mail because I was like, this was so surreal. I'm gonna open this tomorrow. I can't deal with this right now.
Oh no, man!
Because
I
I
wouldn't have
made
done that. I couldn't. I couldn't have slept if I knew that was sitting there. I would have to have opened it.
no, I couldn't. I just like this is too much. Like I
Yeah.
don't but I made like a scream. And luckily, I mean, not luckily for her, my neighbor, she's deaf, so she didn't hear me. So-
Someone's been murdered in the next apartment.
yeah, I think she would have called the cops if that was.
Yeah. So yeah, so he got back to you, and then obviously the whole story of you getting in the riot and working, and we talked about the whole thing of us being friends online for a
Mhm.
while, and then Proco done the video with you doing the
That's
drawing.
much later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way down the line, but like, yeah, it's a thing where like a couple of years past where I was like, oh yeah, I know this person. So like, yeah, so I think kind of
Hmm.
pandemic time, pre-pandemic, we kind of started chatting back and forth more regularly, and you came into my Control G server at the time, like the Discord server we have, and we were
Yeah.
chatting away at that as
Great
well. And
community. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's one of these things with Discord. It's always interesting how you have 1,500 people now on this server, and there's like 5 or 6 people talking at one time.
That's
Like,
always how it is.
yeah, it's
It's
more
the
just
it's
I
the
think just
loud minority, but everyone's reading it though.
yeah, probably yeah. So it's like the channel we talked about as well with the Artcast. How like I have like 2,000 people a month follow my Artcast on Spotify and listen to my episodes, and like nearly 4,000 people on YouTube, but not as many people engaged in the comments. But like it wasn't until I said that I was taking a break that everybody was like, "Oh my god, Gordon, I love your podcast." So like it's I don't do it for the gratification of that, but like it's just nice to hear sometimes that you are making an impact. Like when I went to Lightbox in 2019 and I managed to go to Raf's booth and I was talking to people, they were like, "Oh, I recognize your voice. I recognize your voice." I was like, "Oh, I do a podcast for arts." And like, "Oh, Digital Artcast, like, I listen to it." It's just it's crazy that kind of stuff just keeps propelling you to keep doing stuff, and it's
Rob
probably the
is
same.
a
Yeah,
Rob is a pretty. I met him through some friends, like him and his wife and his kids
yeah,
live in north of Los
yeah,
Angeles.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
No, there's a bunch of people that like, yeah, the people I met in Lightbox was crazy. Like, and obviously I got to go to Riot Games and check out the campus as well and see what it was like. And everybody was playing basketball and eating lunch, and it was amazing. So
yeah.
like,
Are you going this year?
yeah, might be going to Lightbox. It's still within the realms of like affordability. Can I afford it? Because I
Sure.
think I've got so much money put aside now that I'm putting to go to THU this year. For people who don't know, I'm going to Trojan Horse in
Ah.
Portugal, which will be funny as well because it's the first time I'm going to the Portuguese version, because the first time I went it was Malta in
I
2018.
like the
So
Portuguese better
Troya, I've heard
because
it's very
yes.
good. Yeah, very shout out Andre, but like yeah, I've heard it's a very good
Oh,
event location. Yeah, so
I
I'm
told
sure.
Andre this in person. I prefer the
Yeah,
Portuguese one because you're locked on this trapped,
on the
literally
island.
trapped.
Yeah,
Well, it's a
people have talked.
peninsula, but
Right.
uh, you're trapped there. And in Malta, what happened is very similar to Comic Con and Lightbox, is that all the people that students want to talk to or like to have their advice or knowledge,
Mm.
they disappear with groups in restaurants in the
Right.
city of Pasadena or in Malta.
Right. Yeah.
While on THU in Troya,
You're in the one
there is
location.
nowhere to go except that
Y-
oasis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone will be there, and you can talk to them, and you can drink with them.
Yeah.
And that was actually, for the rest, I think Malta was actually very beautiful with the castles and the
Oh, it was lovely. It was very
it's lovely,
lovely.
like Valetta, but there's something that you need to get from if you're, especially because the tickets are so expensive. I
Yes.
think THU, the price of the tickets was very actually affordable if you
Mm.
consider it. You can really have one-on-one time with the artists, but if
Yeah.
they disappear in the city, then what
It's
is the
difficult.
difference between IFCC then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's also good for the price because it is essentially a whole week of events. It's one of these things where people go to Lightbox and stuff like that for a couple of days, and you're maybe on site for 1 or 2 hours talking
Mhm,
to people. But with THU, it's an experience in itself because there's so much going on, so many layers to it. Like the live drawing they had downstairs in the basement, and then you've got like all the project reviews and portfolio reviews, the garden outside, the food trucks, the wee breakout areas. Like there's a lot going on for the week that it goes on
mhm,
versus like a lot of these events that run 1 or 2 days, like playgrounds and stuff like that. So which are great events, but obviously don't have the depth, I think, the breadth
mhm.
of what goes on at THU, which is why I think it's very unique in what it
What
does.
people, what I realized in retrospect from festivals is everybody wants to talk to the names, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But what is more important is uh, talk to your age group, like people that are with
Your
you,
peers. Your
your
peers.
peers,
Yeah.
the peers that I went with to all those events from 2014 till 18, 19.
Well, you
They
talked about
are all,
Bram.
well,
Yeah,
go
like
again?
you talked about Bram
Yeah,
Sells. Yeah.
Bram,
Mm,
like Joao,
mm,
like Helen,
mm.
Pablo, the other Pablo,
Pablo 1, Pablo 2, yes.
Pablo 1, Pablo 2. Like, I mean, there's so many more names, and
Yes.
like, I shouldn't have started calling names because then I'm gonna
No,
leave some
you
out.
need to see everybody now.
Yeah, but you
but
know who
but
you
yeah,
are.
yeah.
Yeah,
But those are the
so
people that will learn and come up with you at the same time. Yeah.
right, and I mean, they will actually be the ones that will get you jobs as well. Actually, even more than those big names, because those big names are, depends who you're talking to, 20, 30 years at. I mean, Ryan really helped me, and I'm super grateful to that. And I expressed that to him many
Yep.
times. But I think that is more rare, actually, in that, because he was not a recruiter in that sense, right? Like,
Right.
usually it's the recruiters that you need to talk to more to get jobs.
Yeah, yeah. But those
Uh,
people that are your peers, like the Pablos and stuff like that, like if you were looking for a job at ILM at the time, or you were looking for something, there's more of an in there, there's more of an idea that they could maybe talk to someone for you or like help you, like I really want to work at ILM, right? Well,
or they
great,
can
here's
just
what you need to do.
recommend you to someone else that you don't know, and they're
Yeah.
asking, "Do you know uh,
Yes.
a person that can do this?" And they say, "Oh yeah, I know someone." And it's not necessarily they hire you at the place where they work, but they can
Yes.
also recommend you uh,
To other places. Because
because
they
they
might
know
even
you
get a
in
thing
person.
yeah,
Yeah,
because they might even get a thing where they get offered work, but they can't take it for whatever reason, and they say, well, you maybe be looking for this, but I can also recommend this person because they are just kind of like me talent wise, like they have the same kind of portfolio. They'll probably be a good hire as well.
yeah,
So like yeah,
absolutely.
THU, those things are great. Which is it's a good thing that we're focusing on THU actually because obviously I don't think people really talk about it enough, but it is a great event, and I think Lightbox for the last couple of years has maybe taken over because it's got the big Hollywood names. Like there's all these amazing artists here, but
THU has that
Andre's
too, but I
yeah,
think if you can't afford to come to LA, because think about it,
yeah,
flying to LA, $600, $700 at best for back
yeah,
return. So you have already $700. That's a THU ticket already.
yes,
Then you didn't even have your Lightbox ticket, which is for
right.
3 days, 200,
Something
I
like
guess.
that, yeah.
Plus, then you have your hotel in
Hotels. Yep.
Pasadena.
Yep.
Crazy expensive. That is
Yes, yes.
2,000 for a week, 1,500. Probably if you're smart, you share it with a couple of people.
Yeah. I done an
So
Airbnb the last time, so yeah.
yeah, probably gonna be
I was
calculate
at
another 700 if you share
£600
it.
for the week, I think it was something like that.
Yeah,
So,
so
yeah,
calculate all those costs.
yeah,
And if you're in Europe, you know what? I think that THU is actually a little bit better still to
yeah,
meet people.
yes. I
And
mean, the
I
fact
have,
that I got
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
I was just gonna say like the fact that I got to meet so many people, like including guys like Raf Gazzetti, because I could physically just walk up to him and say, "Oh, hey, dude, like I'm a fan of your work." Like,
Hmm.
like that's something that you don't get, I think, as much with Lightbox, especially because I think with Lightbox, people use it as a way to catch up as well. So a lot of the American guys will all cluster in groups versus like maybe
Yes.
be like one or two people at a time. So it's yeah, I think THU and like again, it's what launched your career essentially. It's how you met Ryan. It's how you had the chance to go do portfolio reviews. Like, Andre's been doing it now. And we talk about like this year's the 10 years anniversary. So, since 2014, probably the first year it was there, you went. And all these years later now it's celebrating 10 years. And like, yeah, he's done a fun, especially I think in the economy and especially during the pandemic to keep it going has
Hmm.
been really difficult for most places.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Everyone that
So
works in event management, my wife, she's an event manager, so she felt it
yeah,
during the pandemic. There was not that
really
much.
difficult. I mean, because
Yeah.
obviously IFCC, you know, um, that has now kind of just gone. It's no longer there,
Yeah.
which is a shame because I'm sounding really rude here, but the person who ran it, I forget his name.
Marcos?
Um,
Marcos Zatsapepic. Yeah.
yeah, yes. So he actually reached out to me the last year they done it and was like, he was a fan of the podcast. He wanted to put me on the sponsor list for nothing. I was like, dude, that's really kind of you, really generous. And yeah, and then it just kind of faded because I think it was at the time, it was during the pandemic, he was trying to run the event, and yeah, just there was just no money left in it. And it's one of these things as well where we talk about the money for these events, but like in a sense, they have to be that much sometimes because the money that goes into running these things is expensive. In fact, the whole point of even just like sometimes because you have to pay people travel, like some people like artists will not take money to come to an event. They won't take like a fee for talking, but they'll say, well, as long as you pay my flight, my travel, my accommodation, that's totally fine. I'll come and talk to your or come and be a guest at your event, that's fine. But as long as you cover these things, and then if you get 2 or 3 people from America, from LA or something like that, you're then try to fly people from Los Angeles to Portugal, put
It's
them up for a
expensive,
week.
yeah. You
It is
get to put them
expensive, so
in our
yeah.
hotels like Andre likes to do.
Yes. But it's good though because he does treat artists very well, and
He does.
at in a time when like we're facing stuff like AI and layoffs and strikes, it's like yeah, he's probably one of the few people in the world that's really like looking after people. So I'm glad that he still is doing what he's
Yeah.
doing. So
He
yeah.
he he his hair fell out because of it. So
Yeah, well, it's
grade up. First time I saw him.
stressful, man.
But it's all it yeah, it's super stressful.
It's a stressful, yeah. I couldn't imagine the amount of work. I mean, I used to talk to the guys who run industry workshops in London, like Daniel and Alex and stuff, and they were always saying about like it takes from year like the event will finish, and then as soon as the event finishes, like the next week they'll take a couple of days off, and then the next week they're basically
Post event
planning
depression.
the next one.
That's a
They're
real
like,
thing.
yeah, but then as soon as it finishes, they're planning the next one. Like it takes a whole year to just plan the next event. Like the venue,
Yeah,
how.
yeah, yeah. I was talking about if you attended. Like I when
Oh yeah,
after
yeah,
my
yeah. There's
first
always that.
THU,
Well,
when you get back home, you're like, well,
the worst of
leave.
it was
Yeah.
from Lightbox because the THU definitely has the depression because it's a whole week where you bond with the tribe. But I think Lightbox as well because I just loved being in LA and like getting to visit Riot Games and getting to visit Blizzard and
Yeah.
Sony and all those guys in their studios and getting to meet Raf and Della and all those guys that were in that side of it. And
Yeah.
um like yeah, just like because I had so many American contacts for so long that I never got to meet because I was in Europe because I'm in
Yeah. I
Scotland.
mean,
And
if you're coming, I haven't posted this yet on social media, but I have a booth at Lightbox this year, so I'll be
nice,
yeah, I'll
nice.
be
Again, like you said, it's one of these things where the money that goes into THU, but then the money that goes into going to LA for a week is yeah, it ain't cheap unless somebody's going to board me. While I'm there, it's like it's so much cash, man. It's so much money because yeah, like you said, the flights and then the accommodation and then
and then the food.
food. Yeah, even stuff like getting Ubers back and forth because if you don't drive or you don't want to hire a car, you have to
Yeah.
get rides places and
Yeah, to pass it. Well, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Well,
if
I
you're
would recommend renting a car. for
Yeah, no,
Uber.
I didn't, I just didn't want to drive in LA. Like, like
Oh
the
no.
thing is,
Oh, okay.
well, the thing is, like, because I'm in, when I was staying there the last time I was in Koreatown, and to get out to Pasadena, obviously, it was a good 20-minute drive or something like that, maybe 15, depending on the traffic. But driving down that, what they call the 401 or whatever it was at the time, like the road, like, it's just, oh my God, people just have no sense of like personal
I
safety.
drive down the 405 3 times a week to Irvine, so
Oh God.
I see
Yeah.
a burning car regularly on the side of
Oh
the
my
road.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just something.
it's
I think I was just too nervous, too anxious to think about driving
no.
in America. It seemed like a bit of a. I think if I was living there, sure, I'd have to adjust. But like when I was just visiting for a week, I was like, I'll just get Ubers. Like, it's just take.
Unfortunately, I'm very reckless, so.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was. I don't think I was that brave. So I was like, nah, fuck, it, I'll just get an Uber. Anyway, going back to what we were talking about. So you've been
Yeah,
in LA for a couple of years,
create
working
some
at Riot
moods.
Games.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, indeed, yes. Um, yeah, so working at Riot Games, and your job has changed over the years. You've done a lot of different stuff.
Right. I actually didn't touch yet on when I started working with Ryan. Like I just gave the prelude of how that came
Yes,
together. So
yes.
I remember my first call, like official work call with Ryan, because the way it happened is they set me up for a 2 day a week contract for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
2 day, but my apartment in Zagreb was 300 euros a month at the time, and
Right.
I was asking like I mean, the money that I was getting in 1 week was already more than enough to cover my rent and food in Croatia at the
Of
time.
course it would be. Yeah, because it's LA prices, isn't it? Yeah, it's.
Well, actually, no. At first, I was just charging, like, they asked me my fee,
Mhm.
and I was just asking a Belgian fee because I have no
Right.
idea what I should ask.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. I didn't care about the money at the time. And I
No,
still don't care about money. And my
no, of
wife
course.
is right that I should.
Yeah.
It's because I'm
But hey,
always,
look,
yeah.
we've all got bills to pay. We've all got to eat. We've all got to pay
Yeah,
rent.
yeah,
Like,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
the problem that I'm highlighting is that I'm kind of dumb in that way because I really don't like every time, and she's right. Like, bless my wife. So
Mm,
she's saying like, "Why are you working today if they're not paying you for it?" I
yeah,
said, "Because it's not about the money. It's about the
yeah,
quality. It's
yes.
about the love that I want to put. Is it good enough? Is more important than for
Am I
me.
getting
I
paid
know it's
enough?
wrong. Please, anyone who listens to this, don't do that. Like,
Hmm.
but it's just I I feel like it has to be quality because I feel whatever will come back afterwards is because you put in the quality.
Yes.
I at least that's what I think.
I mean,
Again,
like,
horrible advice, but
no, but I think also for younger people, it's one of these things where you have to have a balance, right? You don't want to do a subpar job because you're not getting paid enough, but at the same time, you have to eat, you have to pay your rent. I think as long as your basic amenities are being paid, like you can afford rent, you can afford some food, like you can afford to maybe go out occasionally, like that's enough. Like you don't have to overreach with a lot of this stuff, but like if you do enough quality work for long enough, you will start to get to a point where you can negotiate your price and say, well, like I'm going to spend 6 hours on this. I probably should be getting around about this amount of money. So,
mhm,
and it's also about valuing your time, like you as a person, because we talked about this about how like people have a limited time on this planet, so it becomes the most valuable resource is your time. You know what I mean?
sure, yeah. But it started as 2 days a week,
Hmm.
and I just worked 7 days. Like I just did. Like if they wanted they gave me an animatic to. So the first call with Ryan, and I still love this. There's no one that ever did this, and I think
Hmm.
it's just so Ryan. Like
Hmm.
I was in a call with him, and he told me a story, like just him in a meeting room, and I said, "Okay, I got it." He said, "Yeah, you understood the story." I said, "Yes." "Okay, go board it." So
Mm.
there's no script or anything. No, I just told you the story. I want to see what you do. So there was no script. All I had was this. I didn't even record the call. I was
Oh, that's
just,
bold.
he
That's
told me a
bold.
story, and then I boarded it. And then the first feedback I got is, "Don't use that many Dutch angles." And it's like, that's true.
Ah.
But I always have this stupid joke. I am Dutch, so every angle that
Yeah.
it's like all my angles are Dutch. No, but I got thrown around at the time a lot. So I
Mhm.
was storyboarding one project, and the next project I'm in betweening for Ryan Woodward. For people that for Ryan. He for people that don't know about 2D animation, how it works is like the key animator. But Ryan is just an amazing. He could do the whole thing himself.
Hmm.
But I think he was just throwing me a bone to keep me busy. So he asked me to do the in between drawings to make it fluid, like between the keys. And I studied animation, so it was not a problem. But he has a very fluid style,
Right.
and it's like, okay, I got to adapt to this. So I did that for 2 months, 3 months then, and
Hmm.
then suddenly I got thrown on a project, a canceled studio project. I think I we had the permission to talk and post about it
Hmm.
uh, with very big artists like. I mean, I have to name drop here because it was very intimidating.
Hmm.
Because that it's not to just name drop for the sake of it. It's more to express the stress that I was having because 3 months before I was doing in betweens for Ryan, which is a very difficult task, but I was just pushing through it.
Yeah.
And then I was on a project with Jamie Jones and I think James Page and Leighton Hickman and Sung Kim, like he was. And then I had to do paint keyframes. And what Jamie had done, the work was so beautiful in frames, and they wanted me
Wow.
to paint more frames like Jamie did. So I came from in betweening to doing these paintings
That
and
are
I
Jamie
I
style.
was yeah, I was such a flip in my head from animation back to keyframe and concept art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then I had to do some matte paintings as well, which I also. But that's the thing with friends again,
Hmm.
right? I didn't know much about matte painting, so I reached out to a friend of mine who is a matte painter for advice. And it's like, how would you like who is
Right.
actually a professional matte painter?
Yep.
And I just like, how would you? How do you create these things? Like ask questions, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, and then and also I met them through THU, so don't be afraid to ask for help. Like because I
Yeah.
got thrown so much from animation to concept to matte paintings.
You were kind of jack of all trades almost at this point.
Yeah, and in a way I like it because I'm very ADHD and I get pretty bored with something
Yeah. Same.
like doing the same thing. That's why
Yeah.
I like storyboarding so much because you're animating, you're drawing, you're painting sometimes because sometimes you paint more with values and lines.
Yep.
You're acting like
Hmm.
you're putting the music on it for
Yeah.
animatics.
Yeah.
There's so much. Well, right now at work, there's an editor, so I don't put the music on. But
I think that's what's good about with
yeah,
ADHD stuff is that if you build your foundation of drawing as that's your base skill
hmm
and you're really good at that, then you can jump from things because if you can draw, you can storyboard. If you can draw, you can design characters. If you can draw, you can do backgrounds. Like, the fundamental skill that is drawing will propel you into all these different niches of jobs at a studio.
yeah, exactly. I think I always tell students, and actually, it didn't come from me. I watched. I started studying animation, and in my second year, I actually wanted to do concept art.
Right.
And there was this Noman DVD from Good Brush. Everybody
Mhm.
knows him.
Yep.
And he said, I think animation and storyboarding is actually the best education you can have because instead
Yep.
of drawing an arm and rendering it for a week and then at the end of the week wondering why it looks bad, it is better to draw hundreds of arms in that week.
Right.
So then you get more mileage.
Yeah. It's the old Bruce Lee saying of I don't fear a guy who studied 1,000 kicks, but one kick 1,000 times. That's the idea is that like you don't really think about the value of doing everything, but then if you focus and hone your skills into one particular avenue, so drawing, for instance, and you do stuff like when Ahmed was doing like the 100 heads challenge, like everybody was doing it, but the idea wasn't just to draw 100 heads; it was to do the
Get
repetition of
mileage.
drawing the skull and head in different poses so many times that you
hmm
would become familiar with it to a point where it was like muscle memory, right? You were doing it without thinking.
It's like even if you want to become a concept artist, 4 years of your life, if you dedicate it to animation, so you get to paint your own backgrounds, you have to design your own characters, you have to animate them.
Mhm.
Like that doesn't mean that later in life you have to become an animator. You
Yes.
can just let that knowledge be in your head and say, you know what, I'm not going to animate anymore. I'm glad I had that education, but
Yep.
now I know how an animal walks. Like
Yes.
next time I design a creature, Now I know what a walk cycle is and how much space there should be here for animals to jump and run.
Yep.
I you have the, the best thing is when I went to THU, I had 2 short films in my portfolio because in the school at the time we had to create our own short film. You got a year for it. It might have not been the best short film, but at least I have a full project. And also, if you do animation and you create your own short film, you touch every piece, every role. You are a
Mm-hmm.
background painter, you are a concept artist, you are a color key artist, you are a
Mm-hmm.
script writer, you are a storyboard artist, you're even the sound guy. I was there, like doing Foley, like when
Right.
someone's sneaking with a wallet. When you creak it, it creates a sound for a wallet. It's you touch all these things, and if you look at that project when you graduate, you can look at it and see, okay, which part am I weak at, and which
Right.
part am I really good at, and then which part did I enjoy
Mm-hmm.
the most.
Yeah.
So the one that is the best, and you also had a high rate of enjoying, and you say, maybe I should continue in this.
Yep.
Because if you just study concept art as you graduate, then maybe 5 years down the line, you said, "Ah, I wish I could create a short film, or I wish I could animate, or I wish I could design characters. I only do backgrounds." Like
Yep.
you had an education, very intense. It is very intense animation, but you know what? That's the best you can have. You're young. You can handle it.
Yeah, it's one of these things where I've talked about people how these career paths are never really linear. You never really do the same job for a long time because not only does you as an artist change, but the industry changes. What was valuable to a studio 5 years ago will obviously change as the technology changes. We're making games now that need kawaii themed, avatars or something. Like we need to get someone who does that better, or like we're going back to storyboards more, even though they weren't really a thing years ago. Now we need them even more because we want to do more. Like there's this whole high quality bar now with a lot of the Riot like animations that have came out for heroes and for champions, but also for things like in Valorant, where like the anime style almost has been adapted from the East and West kind of combination, and we're seeing a lot more of these cinematics that are coming out that
Yeah,
have these like even I think it was Cult of the Lamb at E3 or whatever it was. It's not E3 anymore, but Summer Games Jam. Like they had this mini animation to promote a new DLC for a co-op thing, but the animation I think was done by the line animation or Line Studio, and like there's more need for that stuff now because it seems to be like indie games want that kind of stuff. They want the flashy thing because the game doesn't look as flashy, so they'll need a fancy cinematic. And like Dead Cells had it for years, where the line
mm.
animation also done a bunch of stuff for them. So
It's
so
amazing
yeah,
work. Yeah.
yeah, so you're always changing what you need from year to year because the industry changes so fast.
But there's
So
still
yeah.
something about. So I'm gonna step forward and admit this.
Hmm.
I used AI a couple of a month very extensively to play around with it. This sort of, is this
Yeah.
thing really more powerful than me? How can I use this? How I want to understand it so that I'm better
Yes.
prepared for whatever comes.
Mhm.
And I tried using it at work. Like I had an entire storyboard.
Mhm.
I know I am not pro AI.
Yes.
I don't like AI. I just want to disclose it. I just want to understand it, and I want to see what is
Yeah.
possible.
I think we've
There.
all, even I'm the same. I have tried it, like, and when it first came out, it was like, oh, what is this thing? Let's see what it does. And I think
Mm,
we've both talked about this as well, about how it's unethical. Obviously, it's basically illegal at this point. We know, but like in a sense of like reference gathering, and a sense of like try, it's trying the stuff to integrate in your pipeline and think about things from another direction, versus the people who are blatantly like, here's a prompt, here's the output, I am an artist. That's
right.
yeah, that's not the stance you're taking. Yeah.
The thing why I used it is I did an entire storyboard, and there's this
Mhm.
program called Viscom
Right.
that I thought was interesting because it keeps your lines and it renders it somehow. So
Right.
I drew this sequence, and I frame by frame I ran it through Viscom, which took some time.
Hmm.
And then I had this full, and it actually did quite well. Like the characters looked realistic in the storyboard. It took really well of the architecture that I drew. It
Hmm.
rendered it, but it's not what it should be for the
Hmm.
project. So,
Right.
but it makes it look real. It was like, wow, okay, it's shiny,
Yeah.
whatever. So I put it together, I pitch it, and suddenly I get feedback. Well, the sky is not supposed to be that light; it should be darker. And this character doesn't really look exactly like a character. Can you? And I was getting so many color notes, so many design notes, that I was
Yeah.
like, this is a storyboard. This is not. And my editor Jeremy and I, we were talking about it, and I said never again, because
Yeah.
it's we it is a storyboard phase. This is all about staging and acting and stuff that I already drew before.
Yeah.
There's no need for it to be that rendered, because
Yes.
then the art directors and the game directors are going to look at this and start critiquing it as a finished frame.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and when it's a drawing, it leaves much more open to interpretation. That is the power of a drawing. So
Yes.
then I just concluded, actually, still drawing is much faster than using AI for
Oh yeah.
storyboarding.
100%.
and,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
it's not because it's, I mean, it depends on what aesthetics you like, but you cannot deny that a sketch has much more openness to interpretation, that everyone can still fill in the blanks, because
yes.
if you just go to the straight to the finish from the storyboard,
Yep.
there is no room for organically for people to put in ideas that a drawing leaves itself open to.
Of course.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes sense.
No, no. I mean, so I just had Jason Shire on recently, who's obviously an artist at Paramount, and he's working on Transformers One. Has previously worked on Blue Eyed Samurai, but before then, many many other animated movies. But he was talking about the idea that studios are now hiring these people who do AI, and it is more of a headache to put up with those guys than it is to bring them on, because the amount of
Mm,
changes they need, the amount of stuff that they can't get right straight away, or like if you give them specific feedback, they can't incorporate it because they're not artists, essentially. Like,
mhm.
not in a sense that I'm trying to say that AI art is not art, because it isn't, because fuck AI, but like at the
Yeah.
same time, it is also a thing. If you don't have that traditional training and someone will say to you, look, the sky needs to be this different color, can you move the building right? You can't, if you don't know how to work Photoshop, you'll then look at it and go, oh, I can't do that. I'll try and reprompt it and bring something out again. But it's now that the studios are noticing is that they're thinking, oh, we can save money by, firing 10 people and hiring one to do AI. It's taking more money to fix that person's mistakes than it would be just to pay the people to do it anyway. So it's
Mm.
part of the reason Jason was saying, I think a lot of the guys in the animation guilds in LA are now going on strike over the summer, because they want to eradicate AI from this process, because it's just muddying the waters of what they want to do with their studios. And
Yeah,
what he
there's
said is,
something.
yeah,
The journey is more important, and AI doesn't give
the
you a journey.
process. I just
And
literally, so his episode won't be out yet, but like I just interviewed James Kane, the sculptor, and we were talking about
mhm,
how the process of building something is where the journey is in art, essentially, where like, people think about the end result as all you see and all you want. You look at the art book and see the fancy picture, but the years it takes to build that repetition up to get to that point, but also then the iteration of building something and then going over and over and over again and getting the feedback. That's what it is to be an artist. It's not the finished painting. It's the brush strokes. It's the oils. It's the experimentation with the gouache. It's putting paper over it. It's that journey, that thing you do to get to the end result, is
mhm.
where the art is
That's
where the
where the
artist
ideas
is.
come. Like
Yeah.
when I read a script and I don't know how I'm going to tackle some scenes,
Hmm.
I just start drawing. I
Yes.
just, whatever image comes up in my head, I close my eyes, I
Hmm.
see the thing in my head, and
Yep.
whatever it is, I draw it. And I'm
Yep.
not worried about how they line up at that point. I'm just trying to come up with compositions that tell the story. And then
Yep.
afterwards, when I got like a page of those or two, whatever, how much brain vomit I just did,
Yeah.
then afterwards I can say, this frame would be nicer here. And I start puzzling it together. So
Yes.
I don't start boarding directly from, and they enter and it's like go to the end
Yeah.
chronologically. I just read it, and then
Hmm.
whatever image comes up, I draw, and then
Yeah.
afterwards, like a lot of them don't get used, but I still deliver them the same. Like at the end, here are frames that I didn't use, but maybe there's something you like. But
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've always talked about like the art of drawing and taking that time to get good. It's like learning a language. When you learn, like when you were learning English, for instance, or stuff like that, like, having a conversation with someone early on is frustrating, because you know what you want to say, but you lack the vocabulary to really vocalize what you're trying to say. So you want to say something really articulate and really in depth, but then you're like, well, I only know 3 words, right? So I can't really say what I'm trying to say in this language. It's the same with drawing. If you only know, if you don't know perspective, if you don't know composition, if you're really bad at lighting or color theory, then when you try to iterate and make something and put something on the canvas, it will be subpar, only the fact that like it isn't your true vision in your head. It's not what you thought it was going to be because you lack those tools, that grammar. But when you learn those fundamentals, when you learn perspective really well, when you learn anatomy, when you learn composition, dynamic, gesture, all that kind of stuff, that then gives you that vocabulary to express yourself ever more articulately. So, like, yeah, that's essentially why you need to learn those fundamental steps. Because, like you said, when you're drawing something, that vocabulary you've now built allows you to express yourself way beyond the capacity of anybody else that could do that.
Well, it depends. How do I answer that? Because I agree, but on a certain point, I have a different idea about.
That it's not like a language or not like grammar.
No, I do agree it's a language, but you were talking about the more fundamentals you have, the better you are at talking the
Expressing.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a difference there because, like, let's take a music analogy.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do modern classical music, yes, you need a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fundamentals.
Yes.
But if you like doing punk rock
Mm.
or grunge,
Yes.
like you don't need that much technical savvy. You need attitude and power. And I think
Yes.
even in classical music, you need attitude and power, but it just needs to be backed up by a lot of technique, like a
Yes.
certain technique. Because in punk rock, probably you have a lot of control of feedback and know how the amp works, like, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different things. So it's a different skill set, but you could
Yes.
make an argument there. But I believe if you work on South Park or anything like a UPS or Canadian Film Board animations,
Yeah.
what I like to see in a sketchbook, like just go back to draftsmanship or away from, if there is an attitude, if there is like, if you feel in the sketchbook that the person has drawn with balls, like it's like
Yeah.
this person is not fucking. You can see that in sketching. Sometimes you have sketchbook of a person, like you can see it in the line
They're
quality.
timid. They're very
Yeah,
timid.
they're
Yeah.
timid. They're not putting their heart behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
what I love seeing is, regardless how technical it is, how crude it is, if I can see that there is heart behind the
If
drawings,
you can
like
see
somebody,
expression on the page,
yeah,
yeah.
if some, because I have a friend, uh, I met him in Belgium again. I was in school with, just check him up, and his sketchbooks are filled like pages, and it's not the most technical stuff, but it's so expressive. And I was just like,
Yes.
damn, I can feel the guts in this.
Yeah.
And
I've seen it.
he doesn't want to work in the game industry and movies,
Yeah.
so he doesn't need all that. But
No, of course. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he does sort of, for like I said, for punk and rock bands, like the
Mm-hmm.
posters for the
Yeah.
albums and the concerts, like concert posters, but they're very like street art punk, and
Energy.
then you're like thinking, does this really need a technical anatomy correct figure? Because I actually think that would take away from the street vibe it gives, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
I,
Like
I think that,
yeah.
yeah, the idea was given was not that you need to have that technical ability at a high level before you even do work, because we know
Mhm.
there's so many people in the industry that will get hired when they're not masters of anatomy. I mean, for God's sake, like Jim Lee still talks about how he struggles with anatomy, like, and he's been drawing fucking superheroes for the last
It's
40
very
years.
humble of him.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
don't
because he
buy
is
it.
incredible. I know. But yeah, like if you can draw a person roughly, like you will get work. It's just that I think like what I was trying to iterate was, the more you have that power, like the higher it is, then the more you can express yourself, because then it frees you to think about. I'm not really thinking about what the forearm looks like. I just know how to draw a forearm, so I don't have to process that as much. Because obviously, at the beginning of the skill set, when you're learning, you're very meticulous of lines because you want everything to be accurate. You want to make sure that a forearm looks like a
Right.
forearm. Yeah. Versus
The,
like when you're a master or you're someone that's at a higher level where the expression is probably a bit more key than the anatomical sense, because gesture maybe trumps that
mm,
sense of learning anatomy. So yeah.
I think mistakes are an opportunity to create something, to see another potential in your work. Like if you
Yes.
make a mistake, like it's like life. What if I say a stupid thing to you right now? afterwards, after having said it, I can sit here and like panic. I said something
Mm.
stupid, or I can twist it into a joke and we can continue the conversation, or a clever way to like. I think that's the same way with drawing. Like the
Yes.
words I spoke to you, I cannot take back. That's why I like working in permanent mediums, because what I
Yep.
just put on the paper, I have to find a new way to fix it.
Yep.
Even going as radical as drawing a Black Panther over my mistake or something,
Yeah.
uh, like, but you
Or putting
have to
down
come up with a
post-its and drawing over the
solution.
post-it. Yeah. It's
Exactly, something like, just be
yeah.
creative in solving problems, because that's your job. Like,
Yeah.
even
I think
even at a micro level in the drawing.
yes. I think that like we've talked about this before, but like how people can be very timid in their sketchbooks in the sense that it really should be like you don't want to open a sketchbook and every page as a masterpiece. It's like a taped off gouache painting. Like everything. It's a waterfall. It's a person. It's a colorful expression of
Mhm.
joy. Like sometimes the sketchbooks I've opened at THU that were the most interesting were the ones that were like bursting at the seams. Like they were full of like paper clippings and stuff they'd stuck in overnight, or like they'd got like a wax seal, like I've done with mine, and tried out wax seals and stuff and drew over them. And like it should be an experience opening someone's sketchbook and looking at it and thinking, oh my god, like the thing I love about your book, which is this thing we were talking about here, this figured out. The thing I love about this book is it's not curated in a sense that it's like everything's perfect. There's perfect borders, there's perfect edges. It goes from one subject matter to another. It's just an explosion of your head onto paper.
Yeah,
You
it's
know what
more
I
of a
mean?
journal as well. Yeah, when I'm traveling, like,
Yeah,
there's too many plain drawings. There were
yeah,
more, but the editor
not
was like,
enough.
"Let's take some out."
Yeah. But like, I mean, you've got like, so for instance, you've got these ones that are like a bit more like curated. These are fine, really one
Yeah,
pieces
those are
that.
more paintings at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But then you've also got pages where it's like, like it's just like, there's a bunch of stuff. There's
Yeah, those are literally my sketchbooks. Yeah.
yeah, like there's just pages. So like that's the idea is that this is why I think I like it because it feels like a sketchbook. It feels like I'm personally opening your sketchbook. I've
Mhm.
bought your sketchbook. I'm opening it. I'm looking through it. What it is, it's like you said, it's like it's your journal, it's your sketchbook. You take your sketchbooks everywhere. But then so many art books, because I'm a connoisseur of art books,
Yeah.
are the perfect paintings. Are each painting or each page from one to the next is one frame or one painting. The fact that like with Master Kim's books as well, that you just would go through them and it's just everything he's thinking about all the time. It's just exploded onto the
Yeah.
page.
I appreciated that he also put in his book sketches that probably aren't his best,
Right,
but he just put it in anyway because that's
of
his
course.
sketchbook, and
It's
that's the vibe that I liked about them. Yeah.
it's where you go to fail. It's sketchbooks shouldn't be these perfectly curated. I mean, years ago I was in university and I bought this really cool sketchbook online that I researched for ages. It was the perfect sketchbook. It had really cool borders and it could open flat and it had the perfect paper and blah blah. And then I opened it and I was
Mhm.
so afraid to draw on it. I didn't want to actually open it. And my friend was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Can I see your book for a second?" Took the book off me and got this massive big black marker and just went like that across the first two pages. And I was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, you just ruined my sketchbook." And he's like, "No, no, no, no. Because I've ruined it, now you can draw on it." And I was
Yeah,
like,
if you have the fear to, like, some people, they spill some coffee accidentally on their canvas, because it's
"Yes,
like, oh, well, there's some marks now.
that's a ruined."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, but that's just what I'm saying is that it shouldn't be a thing that's precious to you. Like with Scott Eaton. Like the guy has a pile of sketchbooks this high in the back of his room because to him it's just a place to dump your brain, right? Just to empty everything out that you're thinking, like a journal. Because because I've also done journaling to try and help me with like my ADHD and with my depression and
Mhm.
anxiety and stuff like that. And I feel like artist sketchbooks are that version. They're basically journals for us. Like rather than writing words, we draw pictures. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I don't like
Yeah.
reading, so that's why.
Well, this is the thing, and people will say, journaling is really great for you, and I'm like, well, that's fantastic if it works for you. But if I like just drawn what's in front of me as an expression of how I'm feeling, or drawn, like Olga has been really great about drawing stuff that she feels like is her demons or her darkest parts. Like she draws them in cartoon form, hovering over her. Great. Like if that
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's
exercises
great
those
work.
demons, then sure, do that. Like, I don't think there's there's no artists in this industry is alike. Everybody is different, and I think that's what I love about this podcast and what I've done these last couple of years is when you ask people how did you get in the industry, everybody has a different answer about how they got in.
Well, it's I think the usual trend is in all those stories is that somebody gave them a chance.
Yes.
You need to go to these events. That's the most important. Like you already heard it before. If you apply online on a position, they'll never answer. They just put that online to signal to their friends that there is a position open,
Yeah.
not for people that they don't know to apply for it. I know that's a painful to hear.
Yeah.
I heard that while I was at Riot,
Mm-hmm.
And just like you get thousands of applications, but you don't look at them. You just send those openings to friends that you want to hire,
Yeah.
the company itself.
Yes.
But the only way to break that barrier is to go to events and really talk to the recruiter,
Yep.
to the other artists and
The art directors. Yeah.
whomever is in a position to put your name forward.
Yep.
And it's practically like everyone at the company that can do that.
And having a sketchbook like yours that is so expressive, that is not afraid to push boundaries and do cool stuff in it, if you then get to sit in front of someone at those events and show them that stuff, they will notice it. They will
Well,
see.
sketchbooks are strange in that way because it shouldn't matter to get hired, but for the thing that I specifically storyboarding, like you have to at least, if you're gonna make it your entire job storyboarding, then you better be a good draftsman.
Yes.
And I actually, looking at a storyboard artist sketchbook for me is very important because then I can see, do they understand perspective? Do they really enjoy drawing? Because
Yeah.
if I just see their commercial, I mean, this is like my ridiculously self-imposed high standard that is weird, because what I'm going to say now is not going to force storyboarders to draw in their free time, which
Yeah.
I'm not saying here. What I am saying is if you draw a lot in your free time, that means you enjoy it
Yes.
enough to do it in your free time. But that's not the rule. I'm not saying here like if you don't draw in your free time, you don't enjoy drawing. That's not. But
Yeah.
I kind of like seeing their personality, and I could see that if they draw their kids or
Mm-hmm.
loved ones or whatever,
Well,
that, that
with
it's like a mirror in their personality, like who they are. Yeah.
yeah, like when we watched the sketchy Van podcast with Christian, he always talks about that thing of, if I paid you $1 billion tomorrow, would you stop drawing?
Oh, that question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is quite, which is what you're talking about. Is this like would, if you weren't doing it for money, would you still do it?
Yeah.
Like would you still be drawing? Would you still be? And most people always say, yeah, there's no amount of money you could pay me
Good
that
old
would.
Christian with the
Yeah,
question.
go Christian. Shout out Christian. There's no amount of money you could pay me to stop creating. Because it's something that's inherent in my DNA. Like I need to be able to, if it wasn't, even if it wasn't art, I'd still be making music. I'd still be building toys. I'd still be making YouTube videos. I'd be creating, and like to create is something that's inherent in me. I can't stop that from happening. And I think that is the true testament of, you don't have to draw like you're at your work. You don't have to put in 20 hours, to draw something. But yeah, if you sit and draw your dog on your off time, then sure, or you draw your TV or you draw your coffee table or your mug, or, like you're doing it just because you need to get that movement in from day to
Mhm.
day, then sure. But it's also, I think, about keeping the fun in it. Because for a long time, I'm doing a project just now, I've not talked about publicly, where I'm playing a video game, and from the perspective of the character, I'm keeping a diary, but I'm drawing like the person in the game is taking a book and drawing what's in front of them. I'll basically I'll put the controllers down, have the game on TV, and then I'll
Mhm.
draw what I think he's seeing, because I put it in first person mode, and he can basically see what he's seeing, and then I'll draw it and write a little blurb about, oh, I came across this thing, like stuff like that keeps the fun in learning, because I'm still drawing, I'm
Yes.
still working on perspective. Like that's also key in my eyes, is keeping the fun in your work.
I think for me there was a moment I was in school. I think university animation
Mhm.
school, and I was working in a bar, which I kind of enjoyed, but I just went to my teacher with my sketchbook because one of the teachers, he had his own studio in Belgium, so walking the dog,
Hmm.
and that's the name of the studio. And I just went to him and I say, hey, like, I wonder if I can actually help you in the studio. Here's my work. And
Hmm.
he did hire me for the summer in that studio. Uh, and I met this person. So that's another thing. Like, don't be afraid to go if your teachers are like, doesn't need to be Riot or Blizzard or some big company. Just
Yeah.
get experience. Just go anywhere where they would have you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the first part. The second part is I was at the studio and I was doing like background paintings for some French TV show animation, and there was this background painter, and I asked her, it's like, oh, we're passing around sketchbooks. I was like, what do you do in your free time? Are you working on something personal? And she said, no, actually, I stopped doing personal work. Like it just became a job. Like I don't do art in my free time anymore. And I was thinking about that for a month afterwards. I was like, that's horrible. I would never want to be in a position where I wouldn't do art in my free time because it
Yeah.
is so it works as meditation for me. I just like drawing to forget. Like I don't listen to music or I do put music on. I'm just thinking about while I'm drawing, I'm not actively really I mean, I am thinking about what I'm drawing, but in my head is I'm going through
You're in the
stuff.
flow. Yeah.
No, thinking about live and stuff like and like meditation. It's really is meditation. So
Yeah.
if I don't draw in my free time, that means I can't meditate. Like some people like
Yeah.
to like we talked about before. Like Espen like was trying to learn me how to meditate with the app. I tried it. I sat there for 2 hours with that app. Like I can't do it, but I get the
No.
same effect by drawing,
Yeah.
by
I think
just
it's the
emptying my mind. Yeah.
yeah, the ADHD and some people, which, like I remember seeing Darren Yau's post a way back, and I've talked about this before, where he was saying something like, yeah, I think something like 70% of my studio at the moment is like neurodivergent. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that doesn't surprise me in the least. Like the most people I've met who are creators, I think are somewhere on the spectrum, like have some version of they can't sit still or they have so much energy they have to put it somewhere else, like
Yeah.
drawing or expressing or singing or and I definitely feel that. Like the thing I've found that's been the worst for my condition is that this is going way back, obviously, like years ago. I was so scared to draw and paint because I was so afraid of being judged that
Mm.
keeping that stuff inside made me sick. It made me, overeat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't concentrate on stuff. My relationships were strained because I was aggravated all the time. And like the more I have put that fear aside and just drawn in my sketchbook or drew for the fun of it, like the fear goes away. Like if I just stop caring about what people think and just do it because I love it, that inherently is way more healthier for me than keeping that stuff pent up inside constantly. And I think that is the way of people who are on the spectrum, is that they
Mm.
need that expression because it is a form of therapy for them. It's a form of like stimulation of like regulation for your nervous system.
Yeah, well, actually, talking about ADHD and stuff, I am diagnosed. I took Ritalin from since I was 7 till I
Oh
was
god, I wish I was in
18.
America so I could actually just take that.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I was in Europe. Like I had to
Oh right,
take
okay, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had to
They
take
have a version of it in America. This is similar,
Adderall
right?
or something like.
Yeah, something like Adderall. Yeah, yeah.
So I took Ritalin. So when I was a kid, I couldn't sit still in class. Apparently, I don't remember much from when I was a kid, but these are the
Right.
stories
Yeah.
that in class I would constantly walk out of the class because apparently it was boring for me to sit inside. I didn't write. I only learned how to read when I was 8, which is very late
Right. Okay.
because I didn't want to learn how to read because I like I said to my dad, which is very, of course, sounds cringy now since I'm an artist now, but it was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to draw because it's a universal language. I don't need to read. And then I taught myself a little bit how to read because I was reading comics. Well, not reading, I was watching the pictures. And I was
Right.
trying to understand the story just looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
So when I later on learned how to read, I actually got a lot more from the story. He's like, oh, that's what's happening. So,
Right.
but I had to go to child therapy at 7 or 8 because I was also very odd at making friends or something. Like I said, I don't remember much. I'm not trying
Mhm.
to sound like I was a like some sort of problem
No, no, but I
child or
think
anything.
is very on point for if you are, because I know my friend, like I have my friends also who are ADHD, but I also have friends who are autistic ADHD. So it's like it's even further into that spectrum. So they're almost like, not that they're non-verbal, but they don't pick up on social cues. They don't like making eye contact a lot of stuff. A lot of times, they'll be very recluse in like their own space. It's hard for them to make friends. It's you look at a lot of the symptoms and you're very much like, oh yeah, that ticks a lot of boxes for me. That's always like, I was like that as a kid. And yeah, like it is hard for kids to make friends because you express yourself differently, you talk
Hmm.
differently, you're very fixated on one subject matter that other
I got
people aren't.
sent to a special school for a year. So it was a
Right.
school for autistic children, actually.
Okay.
And they put me there because they thought, I mean, I don't remember it much, but
Mhm.
after a year they took me out of that school because they noticed I wasn't as special as some of the other kids. Like, but
Right.
like
Okay. Yeah.
it was, but actually I made some good friends there. But I did notice after being there a year that something was different. Like, but I don't know. Like I
Yeah.
was just 7, and I that's why I lost a year in
Hmm.
school because I had to redo that year that I
Yeah.
got sent to that. But again, like I never really thought about this as much. Like I'm not claiming this is some sort of trauma or anything because
Yeah.
it wasn't. It's just everybody has something in their lives.
Yeah. Of course.
I
Yeah.
remember going to the child therapist and we were playing with Duplo. Duplo, you know that? Like it's
Yeah. The
not
bricks.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Was it Duplo or was it Playmobil? I can't
Yeah. Because
remember.
yeah, Duplo's like the kid version of Lego, basically.
Right, I think it was Playmobil with the cowboys. Like it's
Oh. Okay.
and I
Yeah. Yeah.
was playing with that, and then the child therapist would like he would go in with me into the game, and then he would ask me stuff. And how do you feel about your brother? And I just thought like we are role playing cowboys and Indians. Why are you like I couldn't? It was so weird for me. Like it was like
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
trying to play a game, and he was just
Yeah. Yeah.
constantly talking about my family. So I was like,
Yeah. It's
oh,
a it's a
it's
very
to do with Playmobil, you know?
yeah, it's a very good tool for therapists where they'll get kids to be distracted with something else. And because you're so inherently distracted with the thing you're playing with, you'll just word vomit and be like, oh, yeah, that thing, blah, 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 blah. But if you're on the spectrum, you're so focused, hyper focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, I
And it's
was in
not,
the Western here. Like you're talking
yeah,
about my how
we're
my
talking about cowboys and Indians. What's that got to
yeah.
do with my brother? Like, yeah, so that if you're on that spectrum, yeah, then it's harder to get that stuff out of you. But then,
I'll give you another fun example. Like I had a lot of learning uh, uh, like problems,
difficulties, yeah,
difficulties, and I had to go through to special evening school to learn me math and stuff.
right,
And I remember there were these exercises, and she told me, "Okay, I'm gonna go away, and when I'm back, I want you to have finished these, and we'll go over them together." And
right.
she went away, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna hide somewhere, and when she comes in, I'm gonna say "boo," and then I scared her. It's like I wanted to like do a little prank on her. So
Yeah.
actually, I hid behind the
Uh-huh.
door, and she
Uh-huh.
stayed away for like so long, like for
Oh,
30
God.
minutes.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like hiding behind the closet, and I
Behind the
was like,
thing for half an hour.
yeah, because I thought, maybe she's gonna come in any moment, and if
Yeah.
I walk away, then I miss the
Just
opportunity to
right,
scare
yeah.
her. So I
Yeah.
sat there for half an hour. It was like that was my kid's brain, and she
Mhm.
comes in, and I do like boo, and she doesn't scare. It's like, oh, okay, did you finish? I said, no, I wanted to scare.
I stood behind the door for 30 minutes. I didn't do anything.
So you can see what kind of a situation that was.
Yeah, I mean, for me growing up, like most of my report cards were a common phrase. There was patterns where it was like, Gordon could do great if he just applied himself, if he just paid attention, if he just tried harder. And half the time, now looking back, my therapist was always like, well, you clearly weren't challenged at school, so you didn't want to try harder. Like, who was pushing you to do better? Nobody. They were just expecting you to sit down and do things. That's not encouragement. That's not help. That's just, here's
Mhm.
work, do it. Whereas, like, when you work in a creative industry, like with guys like Ryan and stuff, they're like, oh, this cool idea, and then the gun, and then the boom, that kind of stuff. Like the way Ian talks about storytelling. When Ian's like,
Yes.
oh, yeah, I drew the thing, and when I was, wow, like,
Yeah, he's pitching
that's
it completely with sound effects and everything.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the thing you then sit and you build things in your head. You're like, oh yeah, and then it'll come down for it, and then the laser, and wow, that's the things that engage you in your work, and it's hard because it's a double edged sword where it's amazing that these jobs now exist that we get to be part of these industries, and I think it has been a really great safe haven for people who are neurodivergent. But the barrier to entry as the business and capitalism world meets together with industry and art, it then puts up another barrier of you need to be this good to get work, you need to be this talented to get work. And for people who are neurodivergent and haven't really mastered that or haven't really found their niche or their flow, it then is even harder because, you know, it's hard enough to be neurodivergent, but then add on top of that, like striving to the heights of being a really good artist or a really good sketcher or 3D artist. So I do feel for people, like, you know, when a lot of people will say, you know, oh, the industry's, you know, so easy now because there's so much online content, there's so much schools, there's so,
It's confusing. Like,
yeah,
what do I, which, well,
where do you focus? Yeah.
I personally think there is a, it's my favorite book, and they're not paying me to say this because they're all passed away. So
Yeah.
there is 1954, the famous artist course, chapter 3 till 17. That's
Hmm.
everything you need. I think it's
Oh, there
better
you
than
go.
the Andrew Loomis books or Bridgman.
Yeah.
It's by Norman Rockwell,
Okay.
um, Albert Dorn,
Hmm.
Robert Fawcett, uh, John Whitcomb.
I'll find out what it is off
It's
Rembert, and I'll link it
yeah.
below.
You can
Yeah.
find the PDF online for free. Like
Right.
I don't think they publish it anymore, but
Yeah.
it's online.
Yeah. I'll find it and I'll attach it down below. People can find it.
Yeah, the
Um.
famous artist course. It's an amazing. It's I don't know why people aren't talking about it more. And then there is another book, because everybody asks me always what do I need to study.
Mhm.
There's another book called Training Anatomy, and if you just search Training Anatomy PDF, you'll find it
Oh yeah, I've heard
immediately.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
it's
heard of it.
actually
Yeah.
for exercising more than for drawing.
Ah, right.
But
Okay.
with a weird coincidence, it is the best anatomy book for artists
Oh,
because
okay.
it shows exercises drawn, like it is drawn by an
Yeah.
artist, but it's meant
Right.
to show how the muscles move when you're exercising and
Ah, right.
which
Okay.
exercise moves which muscle. But at the same
Right.
time, you can see how a bicep transforms when you flex it and
Which would be
extend it.
good if
Yeah,
you're doing storyboard stuff and you need a movement of a
illustration, anything.
yeah, yeah.
It's so great, and all the names are there in Latin, and all the origins and insertions.
Oh,
You ever
fantastic.
wonder why is this in an exercise book? But
Yeah. I've
it's
seen
amazing.
yeah, I've
It's
seen a streamer called PCAT
mhm.
using it. She was a software engineer in Riot and I think in Hong Kong, but now she's transitioning to drawing and doing art. She's just in a mentorship with TB Choi. But like, yeah, she uses that book a lot to do anatomy
Yeah,
studies. Yeah.
it's
So
amazing. Those two books, it will get you far because the
yes,
famous artist score doesn't just go about drawing; it's about painting, abstraction, composition.
there's
There's
a
a
lot. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, this is the thing as well.
Bernie Fuchs, who I love his work.
Mhm.
He talks about abstract composition and how to create focal points by eliminating details that don't mean that much by flattening them with values, similar
Mhm.
values, even though if they're closer to the camera or anything, it doesn't matter. Like you just need to you need to design a composition more than to draw things as you see them in real life. Like you need
Yeah.
to
I think
alter
it's also
things. Yeah.
a way of like learning where like if you are going to be in the industry, like you can fundamentally start at one place and work your way up. Like you don't have to learn, you know, anatomy, color, composition, and like all in one go. Like if you start with like a base thing of like anatomy and perspective and just build into that and get kind of good at that, eventually when you next draw something, you can add a bit of color and then work out the like you just kind of layer on top until
Mhm.
you have this overall skill set. But like I've talked about it, I think every episode for the last like 2 years, but we
Right.
both know Antonio Staparts, and
Yes.
Antonio has a skill called Artwad that like if you want to learn
Good
to draw,
Discord. If you want to join the Discord from Art Waters, there's a great community there as well.
oh yeah, and Antonio's in there most days, so are his
Yeah.
teachers, Alex and that, you know, and they do I think twice a week now they do either live streams or teaching Tuesdays and stuff like that.
Yes.
His online course is full of stuff that every other day there's something to draw. There's an assignment every other week, you know,
Yeah.
like if you wanted
That's
to
great.
learn now, that's the most like concise, that's how you learn, basically. So even as a tool, like if you don't want to learn to draw exactly like Antonio was telling you, it's a good, you know, launching point if you want to start there and then build into something else. But like it's unlike anything, we both know this, it's unlike anything there is on
Yeah,
the
and
internet for teaching.
it's great. It's especially because there's a community behind it. If you just watch YouTube
Yeah,
videos, you don't have anyone to bounce ideas off. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that
the
is
communities,
very
they're very
important
active.
even in self education. If you're gonna
Yeah.
be completely by, there's some people that can do it,
Mhm.
Like there is an advantage in being totally isolated and coming up with your own style, but
Yeah. Well, it worked for you, so I mean.
uh, isolation, you mean?
No, I mean just like teaching yourself rather than going. I mean,
No,
I know you. I know
I
you.
didn't teach myself. I hired an anatomy teacher
Oh, you did.
privately.
Ah,
Yeah, and I shouted him out in the Proco video. It's just, he doesn't have any art of himself online. It's super strange. Like
right.
he's one of the best draftsmen I've ever met. It's
Oh,
David
fantastic.
Alvarez Mena. Like I could say his
Ah,
name,
yeah, I
but
remember now.
you
Yeah,
cannot find his work online. He doesn't post it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's amazing.
yeah,
And he taught me anatomy. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like in a sense that I think self-taught. I mean, you always try to define what is self-taught, right? Like, did you teach yourself? Did you sit down in front? I mean, like to an extent, you have probably taught a lot of things to yourself. Like you've probably had help along the way, but the bulk of your learning has been you sitting down, ingesting stuff, copying, reiterating, drawing things in front
Hmm.
of you. Like, yeah, so but then it's difficult because I think if you don't want to go that route, like you said, if you want to be in a community, then ArtWad is a great way to do that because that's then your peers again. It's not the people above you. It's not like you're talking to Antonio all the time, but you're talking to people who are also doing the course, who are students, who are wanting to learn as well. Um, so yeah, there's good. I think there's like you said, there's so much now it's overwhelming, but I think Antonio's stuff is a good starting point because he's also curated that skill for the last 5 years and really put his heart into making it the best it can be. So like yeah, it's definitely shout out Antonio. But like yeah, there's multiple avenues. Like and honestly, at the end of the day, even just picking up a sketchbook and sitting down with a pencil and drawing what's in front of you will always trump.
That is where it all starts.
Yeah, that's the base level, and it
That is the birthplace of every creative idea. It is a sentence. It is a little sketch.
starts with a sketchbook. Yep. Something
So
on
it
a napkin or a
starts.
piece of paper.
It
Yep, exactly.
starts,
Bird.
or yeah. Even
Yep.
if it's in your head, like you just gotta write it down at some point, and that's in your
Yeah.
sketchbook. Yeah,
Which is obviously where this came from. This is why we have this now. Your book.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's very funny when I realize these things. Sometimes in life, you're just standing somewhere on a station, or you're just drawing something in your sketchbook,
Hmm.
and the moment itself seems so unimportant. The moment feels so not epic, and you're just
Yeah.
drawing something, and then suddenly that drawing gets featured in a Proco video, and millions of people watch it, and that unepic casual moment that I was drawing suddenly becomes this
No
elevated.
huge
But
thing.
it
Yeah.
all starts like really quiet, actually.
Mhm.
And
I
I
mean,
think,
this is
yeah,
yeah. No, I was going to say this is the thing you talked about as well early on, even in the Proco video about was it you're standing waiting for a bus in somewhere in either Belgium or
yes.
Croatia, and somebody said to you, "What do you want to be? You want to grow up?" And you said an artist, and then the guy replied, "Well, why aren't you drawn?" And
Oh
then you
no,
were
that in
like,
my head, yeah, yeah.
"Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah."
it literally is. What are you doing? There's so much wasted time in our lives, like
Yep,
that you could fill in, like waiting at the doctor, waiting at a bus, sitting on a bus,
yep.
like even. And this is another thing I was actually talking with Antonio about. I said
Mhm,
as a joke, but he took it actually like, no, this is really something to work with.
mhm, yep.
So when I go out, since I was 15, 14, I always had my sketchbook with me. Even when we go to a bar or to a club where people are dancing,
Mhm,
I would stand there because my sketchbook would actually it would make people come to me, so I don't need to don't need to approach people.
yeah.
Like I remember, like even if you're shy to approach a person that you like, you can just go to them and say, hey, excuse me, I in the middle of a dancing, I'm not even joking, it's like, hey,
Mhm.
I'm an artist, here's my sketchbook, I thought you looked very, you have very interesting, beautiful face, would you mind if you come outside really quick and I can draw you a portrait or something, like, like I,
It's like the
nobody
YouTube
ever
guy
said
who's like, oh, I'm a photographer. I take pictures. Can I take a picture really quickly?
right, but
Yeah.
you're just using your sketchbook. You don't, even if you don't use drawing
Mhm,
as a profession and just as a hobby, it can still
mhm.
help you a lot in social situations. Like last week, I was at a cafe and I just stood there drawing the whole cafe.
Right.
And it was like more like a dance cafe, but people came to me like, "Oh, he's drawing," and then they call
Mm.
their friends, "Look, he's drawing," and you can do like conversations, and you don't even if you're shy, it can help you like express yourself even in
Yep.
social situations like that. Because I don't like that people say, "Stay inside. You gotta sit at home and grind." No, no.
Go out and see the world.
F
Yeah.
no. You gotta go outside
Yep.
and you gotta draw the real world. If
Yeah.
you ever draw a fantasy bar,
Hmm.
are you gonna Google pictures of a bar, or you can go to a bar and draw
Sit in a
there?
bar. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I mean, like, I mean, there was an interview with Ian McCaig from way back in the day when he was at the Glasgow School of Art doing a talk, and he talked about how he was trying to draw grass at one point. So he was looking up pictures of grass. He was opening books trying to find pictures of grass. It's like, and I realized if I just went outside and lay on my belly and then looked at the blades of grass and then drew them, that's all the reference I
yeah. I
needed. Yeah, the
remember
grass
that.
was there.
I remember
Yeah,
hearing him say that. But
yeah,
it doesn't mean you can draw in the style that you are inspired by from someone else. I think that's fine. Like
yeah,
everybody has their heroes, but it's just you don't exactly draw what they drew. You try to look at their art and take the spirit of it. It's
yeah.
like, oh, like there's a language or a way they talk or a way they draw that you
Hmm.
can sort of imitate a little bit like an actor. Like,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of these things is where these, as you talked about it with style, like if you're really concerned about style, it's one of these things that you won't really develop in a sense that you can't chase that. It just comes from years and years and years of failing and learning stuff and doing more and more drawing. And then
yes.
eventually you will naturally develop something, but you can't force it. You can't
Your
force a style.
your
Yeah.
mistakes become your style. Because
Yes.
like the
100%. You,
mistakes that you can get away with, it's like, oh, that's an odd way to draw an ear, but I guess it's not completely wrong. It looks interesting, and that's your
yep.
style. And sort of like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know why I draw all these random lines over the body, but I guess that's my style now. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah. Which is kind of where I think Figured Out has been a great kind of vehicle for you to show that, nothing's in a complete order or sense or really cohesion, but it's, your expression of the last couple of years is in that book, and it shows
hmm
that progression of how you've looked at the world, how you've studied it, how you've drawn, and then ended up where you are now. So yeah, because I think there's the book. How many years worth of drawing is that in that book?
oh god. Um, well, I obviously drew more than that. I just took the ones that I found more interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, I think it's like 5 years, four,
Wow.
five. Because yeah, but I
Yeah.
think, funnily, of the drawings where I feel it's the most my own style is where I draw my wife, because I'm not really thinking about any other artist. I'm just thinking about her in the moment.
Right.
So it's very interesting that that is the case. When and there's something interesting. Like, you don't even need to make a book, but put all your work in a folder and look at it
Right.
from a distance, and you can
Yeah.
sort of see patterns in your own work, and then you can start to understand your isms, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the things that you enjoy most drawing
Yeah,
or subject matter. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, definitely, like, I think the overall theme is people, that you enjoy people in the wild, people next to you, people that are part of your life.
hmm
And then that's obviously then carried across into your work. When you draw people for a living, you draw people in situations and scenarios that you see in modern day life, and then you iterate into, games and movies and films. So yeah, I mean, one of these things, like we said, it's one of these things that you strive for many years, because you tried to get the book made for the longest time, and then eventually it got made, and
yeah. And now the next
so
book is already coming up much faster than anticipated. So, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
probably going to be for the end of next year or something, start of
yeah. And will
2026, because I
that
want to leave
be,
some I want to leave some time so that this one can have room to breathe before
yeah, for people to buy it and stuff, and appreciate it? But then will that be
yeah.
basically Figured Out too, or have you figured out the
Oh
name yet?
no, I don't. I no, names are always like at the end.
Yeah, you've
It's
you'll
like, oh,
figure
I
it
gotta
out then.
name this thing. Actually,
Every time,
yeah.
God.
Oh, I like that, a drum
Yeah,
fill.
yeah, yeah. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, one of these things with your books is that it is sometimes a snapshot of. I mean, it depends what you want art books to be. Are they going to be all your professional work? Is it going to be all your personal work, or is it more like what you're doing, where it's a journal? It's an expression of where you've been artistically the last 5 years, where your head's been.
Mhm,
I think those ones are, because they're way more honest, resonate with people a lot more than, we talked about it with, like, with Master Kim, who,
mhm,
God rest him, has passed on now. He did that whole thing of just the vomit of everything that was in his head would
mhm.
land on the page, and then they would make them into books.
He
Yeah,
really made sketching awesome again.
yeah,
Like before
yeah,
Kim,
100%.
before you knew Kim existed, sketching was a preparation for a
The fancy
final
paintings.
piece, and
Yeah,
he made sketching the final piece. I think there's
cool
more
again.
artists that did that, but I cannot put my finger on anyone in
Well,
history.
Carl was doing it for a while. Carl Koninsky.
Right,
He was
but still, his Warhammer illustrations were Games Workshop were more to me considered as a more finished illustration than.
right. Yeah, then the actual just the process of sketching something out.
Yes,
Yeah,
and he made sketching awesome. That's all. That's and thanks.
yeah.
He
I think also just like the fact that he just wasn't afraid to attack any subject matter or any,
Nothing was off
barrel of.
limits. And
Yeah, nothing. I mean, like there was even a whole book he done where it was basically just sex drawings. Like,
oh
but
yeah,
then
the unfollows. Yeah,
yeah, but like, I mean, like he talked about it as an expression of like that is just part of human life. So sure, why not draw it? And that was the thing of like, some of those scenes people would think, oh, that's a bit weird. I remember there's a THU talk he talked about when he'd done his sketchbook review and with
mm.
Carla, and he was talking about a situation where he drew this scenario that never happened because he was in an elevator with another couple from, I think they were
Oh
from China.
yeah, the eating someone.
They eating the person, so he was like, yeah, the thing ended when they got out the elevator and he took his drunk girlfriend to the hotel room, but then he drew a scenario where they both took the girl back to a hotel room and then they ate her. And you see Carla being like, what the fuck? But then he was like, oh, because I just had it in my head, so I thought I'd draw it. But like, I think like obviously, some things you'd think it's a bit
He
weird,
likes
but
shocking people. He likes seeing
yeah,
the reaction from
the
people.
honesty I think was like what was crazy about him was the fact that he just had no filter. Like he would just, and people had this thing for years about Master Kim talking about surely he's autistic or surely he has,
Mm.
some range on the spectrum because how can you do that without, that kind of neurodivergent brain? And, look, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but like at the same time, I think he also was just someone who dedicated himself to his craft and
Mm.
got to a point where, he'd drawn construction lines so many times in his head he didn't really need to. And he was drawing what he loved. He wasn't really given specific tasks. People would just hand him a paintbrush and say, draw anything you want on this
Yeah,
canvas for an hour.
I remember in
Um,
2014 that he still, when he sketched something in your book when you bought it, he would ask what you want me to draw. But the next
yeah.
year he stopped that because it's like people always asked him to draw their dogs or something. Like,
Okay. Yeah, it was
there's
like I
nothing
met him
wrong
in.
with, but it's like,
No, no.
but
Yeah, I
he
met
was
because
like, I want to draw whatever. Like, what? It
yeah,
was fast.
I drew. So I met him in 2018. I've still got the books back there. I've got the drawing. So I have a drawing from Master Kim to me. So that's definitely a
That's
rare thing.
awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I met him in 2018 at THU. I got to, shake his hand and say hello and, and hope you're doing well and your books are really great and thank you for everything. But he's like, oh yeah, I draw. And he drew this guy with like his head coming off and his brain coming out and stuff.
Yeah.
But even just to meet him for 5 minutes and get my picture with him, it was incredible. And then at THU, obviously that year as well, apart from Carla painting live, he was across the other way. He was drawn on his big canvas.
The thing he does. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just sat and watched him for about 30 minutes to 40 minutes and just took it all in. But it's weird to think that we'll never get that again, that is gone. Like
I think
Kim
what
is
we'll
now.
see, because he just showed the world this is possible, and
Mm,
it's like Jimi Hendrix, who came and said this is how you can use the whammy bar and feedback. I think in the
right.
next
You'll see
coming
a
years
generation of
you're gonna see people do that as
people doing
well.
that. I mean, in a sense, and I don't mean to put anything on your shoulders here, remember, but like I think what you're doing now is his continuation of his legacy. Like you
Yes,
see,
absolutely. I'm inspired. I'm
yeah.
never gonna be him, and I don't want to be him. I'm
Well,
trying
he wouldn't want
to.
you to be him either. He'd want you to be Rembert
Yes,
Montald. Yeah.
I would like to, but I am definitely super inspired by it. Sometimes more than I dare to admit.
Mhm.
But I'm trying to with the hatching and the ballpoint pen, because that's really where my heart lies but then again, it's not a medium for finished pieces, so it will
Mhm.
remain a sketching
Mhm.
vessel, the
Yeah.
ballpoint pen.
Yeah. But you can see in the stuff you're doing, not only on your book, but obviously the stuff you're doing, like we talked about, the stuff you're doing in Belgium and like other things like that. You're kind of continuing that legacy.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. Like, I remember when I first saw it in 2011, someone
Mm,
showed me, and that's when I first got introduced to his work. and I was just like, wow, this looks so much fun. Why is it? It's not fair. Why is he having all the fun? I want to have fun like that as well. And that's when I started doing these big environments,
The
because I was
sketchbook
just,
stuff and that.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
was just like, I want to have this much fun too in my sketchbook. Like, it's
Yeah.
not fair.
Yeah.
He's just there having, he's bouncing in his
Yeah.
castle, like a
Yeah.
by having fun. And I was like, I wanna bounce in a castle too. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's in a sense just like James Douglas, modern day James, shout out him. But yeah, so when he started his whole YouTube journey teaching people, like he eventually found like I don't like the concept art stuff. I don't really like fully painting or fully rendering stuff.
mhm,
I
with a
just
lot of
love the process.
atmospheric perspective.
Yeah, he literally just enjoyed
Very
the drawing
desaturated.
people and drawing with lines, and that's why he got into storyboard and animation, and why he does and has worked in animation now, because he found like I just like this bit. It's like studying medicine and then finding out you want to be a dentist, right? You just take the book
Hmm.
about teeth and then go off and do the thing. But it's the same. You find your niche, like you do one thing and then you're like, oh, I really like this particular part of it. Can I just do more of this? And I
Yeah,
think for you, the sketching was because the sketching then led into storyboarding, animatics,
yeah, that's what I do.
character design.
Storyboarding is sketching,
Yeah,
actually, in a sense.
which is now your full time gig. So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to do more paintings as well, because I think doing both, like taking something to a finish, you can learn things as well. From sketching, you can learn.
Yes,
Yeah, so it's both things you need to keep practicing. Finish.
yeah.
So I'm
There's a
working
good
on the
balance
second
of
one.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you've built so much foundation fundamentals that
Mm.
you don't need to enhance that as much. You can take a little time more now to do like other things you haven't tried or as much or before, which is like painting, fully rendering. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. But then it's a legacy of your career, and now it's in your book, and the things you're doing at Riot, and and however many years you're there. But like, yeah, it's one of these
Well,
things where
I still work for Tencent, but no longer for Riot Games. I
right,
work
okay,
on a new game right now. It's called, I can reveal it was at the Game Awards last year. I boarded that trailer. It's the Last Sentinel. It's like an open world.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
on that for the last year and a half right now.
Okay, so
It,
you've moved on from Riot Games now,
yeah, I still Tencent.
right?
It's like a lateral shift.
Right. Okay. Right. I'm with you. Yeah. 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 So, but then
So
you're
there's
still
more people from Riot that went there. Uh,
right. But you're still in LA.
I'm still in LA. Yes.
Still in LA. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. You heard it. If you haven't heard it already, you've heard it here first. So there you go.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
put it on my LinkedIn that it changed, but I never anywhere publicly. But
talked about
it's
it
because of
publicly.
those Proco videos that everybody. I'm gonna be a Riot artist forever, so it's fine. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. In their eyes, you're always at Riot. So yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but
Um.
sometimes in the future maybe I'll
Yeah. I
do
mean, like, one of these things is
freelance
like
or
I'm
whatever.
sure. I'm sure at any point, Riot would love to have you back. It's not like you've burned that bridge and you're never
No,
going to go
there's no
back.
bitch burned at all. No.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You want sometimes you just need that time away to try, a
Yeah,
different hat
because this
on.
game, if you look at it, is hype. It's with the people from Red Dead Redemption and Naughty Dog from The Last of Us.
Oh, okay.
So this is like very, and I kind of, so that the what was fun at Riot for a while and till it became uh, a formula, was doing all these champions and skins
Right.
and reveals, and it's always boom, pow, pow, action, and I love doing action. There's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that. But
Yep.
my reel was becoming all this action stuff, and it still is. I need to update it at some point.
Yeah.
And I
But then again, it's one of
constantly
these
got
things.
hired for action stuff, and I don't mind
Yeah.
that. I like doing action, but right now I'm doing very quiet moments more,
Yeah.
and I love doing those. And I know people who
Yes.
don't like doing them, but I just love them so much right now because I never had the chance to do that before. Yeah.
I mean, it's the guys who like. I mean, like Glenn Clean and Samwise, the guys who worked at Blizzard forever, and you thought they would always be there. Even you know, um, um. Oh my god, the guy who had I want to work at Blizzard.com. Um. Oh my god, he's working
Who?
at Second Dinner. Jamero Kindred. Um.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's fine. I'll come back. Is that him?
Yeah, is it
Okay.
Jamaro Kindred?
Oh, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think.
I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think so. Basically, so again, we thought he'd be at Riot, forever and ever, but no Riot, sorry, Blizzard. But then, he's also left to do Second Dinner, and they're working on Marvel Snap. So like, it's one of these things that you think you're going to be like. The idea is like, you want to work at a certain company. Like for you at the time, Riot was a big thing, and you were like, oh, I get to work at Riot Games.
Yeah,
But then eventually.
I have my entire career. I owe it to Ryan and Riot. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. But then eventually you're like, well, what else is there? What's the next thing? What's the thing that's going to be a wee bit different that I want to maybe change up? And so there's nothing wrong with like wanting to get out and change what you're doing. It's just a natural progression of being
yeah.
a human being.
It's just the marketing. If you do marketing, everything has to be in your face, because you need to get attention.
Yeah.
And that is, if you want the full arc of a story with ups and downs, then you should, like, this game is very narrative driven.
Right.
I wish I could talk more about it, but everything there is to know is Last Sentinel on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which is a trailer with a lot of action in your face. So that's
yeah.
I learned that from Riot, but the actual game that we're working on is lots of.
If you look at the trailer,
moments.
it's very dark, gritty, kind of cyberpunky, like the whole kind of Japanese vibe as well. It's like it's definitely a different take on what you've been doing with like the bright call for Valorant stuff, for like even League. So I totally get.
Yeah, it's completely different.
Yeah,
but to me, it's not. It wasn't necessarily the style or how real it looked. It was just, can I dive into real story emotions? Like, can I explore someone's personality outside of a 2-minute hype video?
Right, yeah, because the trailers you were doing, the stuff you were doing for Riot, especially in Valorant, when it was
all hype, it's all
champion reveals, 1-2 minute stuff. Yeah, I totally get that. So, but then the future will tell. Years from now, you'll look back and think, was the move worth it? But I'm sure it will be, because the game looks incredible. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a fun project for you to be on. So,
yeah. Well, who knows in the future where I'll be? So
hopefully, regardless of what you're doing, you'll still be sketching. So that's the
I'll always be sketching. That is the meditation.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so I've had to adjust my lights here because it's getting a wee bit darker on this side of the world. But yeah, so we went an hour and a half. I think it's a good place to end it, and the fact that we've talked about a lot of stuff, and obviously we're talking about now where you are, but in a couple of years.
Is this the time where the music starts to fade in slowly?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Yeah, we'll start.
Oh, good.
Dramatic panel comes in. There we go.
There we go.
But yeah, so for MD who's got to this point in the video, thank you for watching up until this point. I know it's been a longer episode, but I hope you've enjoyed it. All the links we were talking about, all the books and stuff Rembert was recommending, I'll leave down below. You guys can check them out. And just thanks for Rembert for coming on and giving up his time. I hope you've enjoyed it. So
I did. Thank you. I think I covered a lot of things about my youth I never talked about. So that's
yeah. And again,
that will paint the picture for all.
Yeah, genuinely, just thank you for also to opening up about your struggles as a kid, because I think I've talked about it again. James' episode maybe isn't out yet, but he talked about struggling in school and struggling in high school, and he didn't really get into sculpting until he was in his 30s. So because he was working at basically a labour job in the UK, working in a factory. But I think it's something we don't talk about often in this industry, is how much of a struggle as a human it is to get to where you are. People see the accolades, see your art book, they see Riot Games, League of Legends, Valorant, but they don't see at the back of that how many years you struggled, you really battled stuff internally. It was hard, it was difficult, it was it was a really fucking shitty time until you made your
sometimes if you're really pushing it, but most of the time it should advisably be enjoyable.
Hopefully
recommended
90% of the time. So but it's good that you're honest about that stuff, because I don't think a lot of people really want to talk about it openly, but I'm glad some people do. I think it helps people out there as well.
You gotta be real about it, not just
definitely
talk about it as if
the facade. Anyway, so that's it basically. Stay tuned for another episode coming out soon. Check all the socials again with Digital Artcast to find out what we're doing next. And again, thank you for you guys for listening. Thank you for Rembert for coming on. And
follow and subscribe Gordon.
Like, comment, subscribe, guys.
Helps with the algorithm, it's true.
And indeed. Okay, bye guys, we'll see you guys later. Bye.